Good morning. It's May 30th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the impending launch of a North Korean spy satellite. The North has made clear just this morning that it will launch its first military spy satellite in June. The regime says the satellite will monitor U.S. military activity in real time. President Yoon hosts Pacific Island Forum here in Seoul. Seoul and 17 PIF member states adopt a joint statement on deeper cooperation to tackle common global challenges like the food and climate crises. Russia unleashed drone and missile attacks on Ukraine's capital in broad daylight on Monday. Ukrainian authorities have confirmed 2 deaths and 3 injured during 2 days of attacks. Our top story this morning, North Korea says it will launch its first military spy satellite in June. Now, that's as early as this week. The regime has declared the satellite will monitor U.S. military activity in real time. Lee Soo-jin starts us off.
Tensions are once again ramping up on the Korean Peninsula. High-ranking North Korean military official Lee Byung-chul announced in a statement released by the country's state media KCNA on Tuesday that the country is planning to launch a military spy satellite as soon as June. This marks the first time that North Korea has revealed a timeline for the satellite launch. This comes just a day after the Japanese media reported that North Korea had notified Japan of its plan to launch the satellite sometime between May 31st and June 11th. Japan's Coast Guard, which coordinates maritime safety in East Asia, promptly issued a safety warning for ships. In the statement, Ri, the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission of the ruling Workers' Party, also condemned joint military exercises by South Korea and the United States. He added that the military reconnaissance satellite would be launched to track, monitor, and determine in real time the military actions of the United States and its allies. South Korea and the U.S. conducted the largest live-fire exercise of its kind near North Korea's border last week, which is scheduled to continue until mid-June. The news of the imminent spy satellite launch drew contrasting responses from the U.S. and China. The U.S. State Department denounced North Korea's threats, warning that it will be held accountable if it actually launches the satellite. A launch by North Korea that uses long-range ballistic missile technology is a violation of the UN Security Council's resolutions. Meanwhile, North Korea's biggest ally, China, reiterated its previous stance on the importance of carrying out meaningful and balanced conversations. Its foreign ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said in a press briefing on Monday that China hopes that all the nations involved will understand the crux of the issue with North Korea, strive to reach a political settlement, and address the concerns of all the parties involved in a balanced manner. Ning, however, did not respond to whether the satellite launch is a violation of the UN Security Council's resolutions. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Following Japanese reports that North Korea will launch its first ever spy satellite between May 31st and June 11th, the regime this morning said that the launch will go ahead in June. For more on the latest, we're joined by Mr. Frank Danuzzi from the Maurer and Mike Mansfield Foundation. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before we jump into the North's claim this morning, the North reportedly notified the International Maritime Organization in advance. Now, first off, why is that? Why is it the North notified the plan to the organization?
Well, in contrast to the North's more than 100 ballistic missile tests over the last year and a half, when they try to launch a satellite, they're trying to put the best foot forward on the international response. They're trying to signal to the UN and all parties that this is somehow distinguished from their military ballistic missile launches, and this is somehow, in their minds, justified. So they're beginning to play by the playbook in an effort to minimize the likelihood of severe international response.
Right, and now we have been just confirmed this morning that the North will go ahead with the launch next month, which is just in 2 days, right? Now, the question is, why is this period chosen, especially all the diplomatic events that we experienced, the G7, also Yoon, Biden, Kishida summit? Why after all the diplomatic events, why June?
High-profile North Korean military actions, such as satellite tests, are very often serving both political as well as military purposes. So you may well remember that 11 years ago, in April of 2012, North Korea first tried to put a satellite into orbit. And that satellite launch brought about the demise of the so-called Leap Day deal between the United States and North Korea. And it was motivated likely by South Korea's competitive spirit against, North Korea's competitive spirit against the ROK. North Korea desperately wants to be ahead of South Korea when it comes to satellite launch capability. And South Korea just put a satellite, 7 of them, in fact, into orbit about a week ago. So North Korea is motivated here principally by the competitive spirit with South Korea. But there's also a military component. This satellite may have some limited Earth observation capability, which will improve North Korea's ability to monitor South Korean and U.S. military maneuvers if the satellite functions as planned.
Right, there are lots of reasons for North Korea to go ahead with the launch next month. Now, last week, South Korean and the U.S. forces began their live fire exercises, simulating a full-scale attack from the north that will run until mid-June. Do you think the North perhaps is taking advantage of this joint drill as an excuse to carry out the satellite launch?
It's possible that they may be hoping that China in particular will view a satellite launch in this window as somehow a North Korean response to a South Korean U.S. provocation, rather than a North Korean initiative designed to provoke an allied angry response and sanctions. But I think the principal motivation here has to do with North Korea's competition with South Korea in space. And the timing of the launch is likely due to Kim Jong-un's embarrassment that South Korea placed 7 satellites into orbit 5 days ago. And I'm sure that he has instructed his team to rush forward with this launch in order to try to save face and demonstrate North Korea's own capabilities in space.
Right, the space race is real and also comes at a very timely manner. Now, vehicles and movement of military personnel spotted in satellite images taken of the Medium Parade training ground recently are no longer present there. Now, why do you think the reason is? I mean, does that mean there'll be no military parade? What do you think?
Well, it's always hard to speculate about future North Korean actions, and many of us who try to do that are often wrong. But in this case, I think that North Korea will very likely proceed. And the explanation for why they may have tried to scrub and erase photographs may have more to do with security or something that was revealed in those photographs that they did not want the international community to study closely, rather than a decision to cancel the event itself. But we'll have to wait and see. And North Korea is often capable of surprising us.
Sure. Now, before we let you go, briefly, why is the North's spy satellite catching so much attention globally? I mean, other than the fact that it's the first ever their military spy satellite.
Well, it is a sign of the advance of their ballistic missile technology. But I do want to emphasize here that the capabilities of any satellite that North Korea would likely be able to put into orbit will probably be less than the capabilities of commercially available satellite imagery that North Korea could purchase. And I also believe that it's important to distinguish between launching a satellite and launching a intercontinental ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead. Satellites go up and they don't come down unless something goes wrong. Warheads go up and they come down. They have to have a re-entry vehicle. So the technology of that is quite different from the technology of putting a satellite into orbit. And I don't believe that this satellite launch poses any significant military threat to the ROK or to the United States.
Right, and also the act itself is breaching UN Security Council resolutions in many ways.
It is clearly a violation, and the Chinese are out of line if they doubt that in any way. This satellite attempt, when it comes, will clearly violate multiple UN Security Council resolutions, which China itself has signed on to. And so it's unfortunate that the Chinese seem to be willing to give North Korea a pass on the satellite launch.
All right, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Baltimore this morning.
It's my pleasure to be with you and your viewers this morning. Thank you so much. 감사합니다.
President Yoon is currently hosting members of the Pacific Island Forum here in Seoul, in what is his debut as a host of a multilateral summit. Our Kim Do-yeon has details of day one of the two-day session.
Taking a step further as a global pivotal state, South Korea hosted members of the Pacific Islands Forum and pledged to expand cooperation with them in climate change, security, and official development assistance. This was the first summit between the two sides and was also President Yoon Suk-yeol's debut as the host of a multilateral summit. Attending were 12 heads of state, including leaders from the Cook Islands and Palau, while other nations such as Australia and New Zealand were represented by their top ministers. Calling them close neighbors, the president wished to point out that both South Korea and the Pacific Islands are facing similar issues.
저는 여기 계신 정상들과 힘을 합쳐 PIF와 대한민국이 함께하는 상생의 파트너십을 추구하고자 합니다. 태도국의 생존과 번영에 직결된 기후변화, 자연재해, 식량, 보건, 해양수산 위기는 연대와 협력을 통해서만 극복할 수 있습니다.
According to the joint statement and action plan that was announced following the summit, under the theme of navigating towards co-prosperity, strengthening cooperation with the Blue Pacific, the two sides will build on their diplomatic ties based on freedom, peace, and prosperity. Tackling climate change as the region sees the direct effects of rising sea levels as well as devastating hurricanes was a priority, along with the sustainable use of marine resources. In addition, Seoul will double the budget for official development assistance provided to PIF members. According to the Korea International Cooperation Agency, as of August last year, South Korea spent nearly $200 million in the last 30 years on ODA in the region. They also address issues in security, saying solidarity is key, and jointly condemned North Korea's recent provocations.
Honorable leaders, as the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war has shown us, regional and interregional cooperation is essential if we are to build a safe, secure, and prosperous world.
And now the South Korean government will be switching focus to convincing the visitors to support Busan in the city's quest to host the World Expo in 2030, with 11 votes from Pacific Islands Forum members available. In fact, the visiting leaders will head down to Busan on Tuesday to tour potential expo sites. According to the top office, during the bilateral summits, some countries have already shown support for the bid, including the Marshall Islands and Papua New Guinea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And ahead of hosting the inaugural Korea-Pacific Island Multilateral Summit, President Yoon held one-on-one bilaterals with 10 leaders of Pacific Island countries. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young has this report.
President Yoon Suk-yeol held bilateral talks with leaders of 10 Pacific Island nations, deepening South Korea's engagement with its neighbours in the Indo-Pacific. On Monday, he sat down with the leader of the Cook Islands, which is currently chairing the Pacific Islands Forum, and the Prime Ministers of the Marshall Islands, Solomon Islands, Niue and Palau. They discussed South Korea's official development assistance projects in their countries, including water management, renewable energy and resource development, and expressed their intent to advance future exchanges and collaboration. In particular, Yoon's summit with the leader of Niue also coincided with the two countries forging official diplomatic ties on the same morning. Reviewing Seoul's bilateral relations with each of his Pacific counterparts, the South Korean leader has put a special focus on climate response, maritime cooperation, public health and development, as extreme climate events threaten the health of Pacific Islanders, as well as the region's economic and social development. On Sunday, he met with Kiribati's President Tanati Mamao, who expressed interest in South Korea's economic development model and working on advancing the fishing industry and health. Sio Sisavaleni, Prime Minister of Tonga, said he hopes to work with Seoul in the digital sector. Tonga was the first Pacific Island nation to forge diplomatic ties with South Korea in 1970. Meanwhile, Kausea Netano, the leader of Tuvalu, highlighted cooperation on telecommunication facilities, hydrogen exports and decarbonisation in shipping. And the leader of Vanuatu also requested support in future development projects. James Marape, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, said he hopes for investment by South Korean manufacturers and for Seoul to reopen its foreign aid agency in his country.
Going forward, President Yoon pledged to develop just and trust-based relations with the Pacific Island countries, all of which now have bilateral ties with South Korea. The leaders welcomed Seoul's growing interest in development assistance to their countries. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden emphasized the importance of alliances to defend democracy. In a speech at a Memorial Day ceremony held at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia on Monday. During his address, Biden also stressed that the U.S. military has long fought for democracy. He also mentioned American troops were stationed on the Korean Peninsula, preserving peace side by side with South Korea. Biden said democracy is America's strength and thanked all the soldiers who sacrificed their lives to preserve democracy. After facing heavy missile and drone attacks over the weekend, Ukraine's capital Kyiv came under another wave of attacks from Russia. Monday's attacks were also the first to take place in daylight hours in the capital in months. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Russia has been ramping up assaults on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv this month. On Sunday, Kyiv faced heavy missile and drone attacks, and again on Monday, the capital came under another wave of attacks from Russia, this time during daytime hours. According to the Ukrainian military, Russia fired dozens of cruise missiles from strategic bombers stationed in the Caspian Sea. While most of the missiles were shot down, the attacks killed 4 and injured 25 others in the city in the 2 days of the assault. The latest attack on the capital was all the more concerning as it marked the first daytime attack in the area in months, while streets were full of people going to work and school. The daytime assault followed a massive Russian air attack using drones the previous day. Ukraine says it shot down 58 out of the 59 drones used to attack the capital on Sunday. And with Moscow using Iranian-made drones, Ukraine's parliament voted in favor of a proposal to impose additional sanctions against Iran to stop the transit of Iranian products through Ukrainian territory. Ukraine says Iran has supplied Russia with so-called kamikaze drones, which have been used to target Ukrainian infrastructure, leading to civilian deaths. While Russia has so far launched 16 assaults on Kyiv this month, the Kyiv Regional Military Administration says Moscow seems to be changing its tactics, demonstrating its will to attack the civilian population. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Turkey, where sitting President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan won the re-election over the weekend in a runoff vote. Now, the win means Erdoğan will rule for another 5 years, extending his time in the presidential seat by a third straight term. His success comes 2 weeks after he failed to win more than 50% of the votes needed or an outright win in the first election round. According to figures based on 99.85% of the votes counted so far, Erdoğan secured 52.2% of the runoff vote against his opposition leader, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. He got 47.8%. Now, he described the election as the most unfair in recent years, but didn't dispute Erdoğan's victory. Turning our attention now to Kosovo, where at least 25 NATO troops have been injured with clashes in Serb protesters while defending town halls in northern Kosovo. NATO has condemned the attacks on its peacekeepers as totally unacceptable. The clashes broke out on Monday after the installation of ethnic Albanian mayors. They were elected in an April vote that was boycotted by Kosovo Serbs, who make up the majority in the northern regions. Now, Kosovo declared its independence from Serbia in 2008. Its sovereign status has been recognized by 99 United Nations member states. Russia on Monday issued an arrest warrant for United States Senator Lindsey Graham over comments related to the war in Ukraine. Now, the warrant follows Ukraine's release of an edited video of a meeting between the Republican politician and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday. In the shortened clip, Graham says, quote, "The Russians are dying," and later in the conversation says that the U.S. military assistance to Ukraine was the best money we've ever spent. But the shortened video puts the two separate remarks together. Graham responded to the arrest warrant, saying he would wear it as a badge of honor. Zelensky's office on Sunday uploaded the full, unedited clip. And finally, a kitten trapped in a rain pipe for 3 days has been found alive in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Rescuers from the animal charity group Animals Lebanon were able to save the kitten on Friday local time, using special small cameras to locate the furry feline. According to the vice president of the group, the kitten got trapped shortly after being born. It was reportedly part of a litter and abandoned by its owner. The rescued kitten has fast become popular, drawing attention from volunteer rescuers, the public, and even some politicians. It's been suggested that it be named Beirut.
Good morning. It's a muggy start to the day, very warm and humid, with the humidity level reaching more than 90% in the capital. And highs will also hike to 29 degrees Celsius this afternoon, with a chance of passing rain later in the afternoon. And right now, wet clouds are dropping rain on Jeju and the south coast. Parts of the south coast are seeing heavy rain of 15 millimeters an hour, which should gradually let up this morning. But Jeju Island could see on and off rain into tomorrow. The resort island will see rain picking up as the day goes on today, with up to 80 millimeters of showers expected, while passing rain is in the forecast in central regions and Jeollado until this afternoon, and it could rain along with thunder and lightning. The regions near the coast will see temperatures on the cooler side, with 22 degrees in Busan and Sokcho at 20, and the air quality will be normal to good nationwide all day today. Now, Jeju is forecast to see rain through the end of the week, while the mainland stays mostly sunny with early summer temperatures. Now, that's Korea for you. Here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
In what sort of environments do new enterprises typically flourish and succeed? It should be a place that helps an enterprise to grow, where an enterprise can realize its unlimited potential with talented human resources, where the success of a business is guaranteed. It is the Chungbuk Free Economic Zone.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Good Morning Seoul.
And we're broadcasting to you live from Seoul, South Korea. This is where you can get
interactive radio that you can watch and listen to. Enjoy Radio Clock with me.
Connecting Korea and the world, Arirang Radio. It's our 20th anniversary of our station. For you, wherever you may be, and for 20 years like a friend, as a messenger, and as a partner. We have shared countless happy memories, and this might just be another beginning. As you've done for the past 20 years, and for the next 20 to come, join us on Arirang Radio. Always Korea, always Arirang Radio.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
어쩌다 마주친 그대 모습 We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Making news just for you. It's May 30th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Good morning, Yoon.
Good morning, and Nal Song.
Hi, everyone.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed. A news feed which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Our first story. Flights from Guam to South Korea have finally resumed, bringing the first batch of South Korean tourists stranded on the typhoon-battered island back home. 188 Koreans arrived at Incheon International Airport on Monday night. They were the first among over 3,000 who have been stuck in Guam for days after Typhoon Mawar damaged airport runways and cut off power and water supplies. And from this Thursday, students who test positive for COVID-19 will no longer have to be under mandatory quarantine for 7 days. Instead, they will be advised to stay home for 5 days, and during those days, they won't be marked as absent, and this comes as health authorities have downgraded the threat of COVID-19. A few days back, a man in his 30s was arrested by police in Korea for opening the emergency door of a plane minutes before landing. He opened a door in midair, to be more exact, around 250 meters above from the ground, and police said the man claimed he felt like he was suffocating and wasn't in the right state of mind as he recently lost his job. Fortunately, none of the 194 passengers died, though many were taken to the hospital after fainting or having breathing problems. Now, we're going to take a closer look at the third hashtag. Over the weekend, we saw many clips vividly depicting how chaotic and scary this moment was for those on board. One photo in particular blew up on the internet. It's a photo of a female flight attendant blocking the exit that has been forced open. She seems to be trying her best to stop any additional harm from being made. While many applauded the flight attendant's courage, another discussion sparked online. It was in regards to her uniform. Many took note of how this flight attendant was dressed in a tight-fitting uniform with heels. They said not only does it look uncomfortable, but extremely dangerous. Now, I would like to expand our news feed here into the studio. This isn't the first time people have been calling for changes in female flight attendants' uniforms. Now, what are your thoughts on this now?
Yeah, you know, female flight attendant uniforms have been kind of this icon for the past few decades, and everybody wants to be a flight attendant because of these pretty uniforms. But if you think about it, their purpose is to keep us safe during flights, especially in emergencies like this. And not just in Korea, but if you look all over the world, there's a lot of tight-fitting uniforms. And so perhaps it's time that we start making changes so that the movements would be a little easier in terms of in times of emergencies like this.
For sure. What are your thoughts on this story?
Well, I mean, I do agree to a certain extent. I mean, it'll be more, for me, I think it'll be more about the sexualization of the image and the glamour and all that. But I think, to be honest, flight attendants themselves aren't, you know, the service, they're more for the service rather than saving the plane when there's emergencies happening. And I mean, it goes for the male attendees as well, the male flight attendants, also the pilot. They'd have to dress in suit and tie with the cap on, hugely uncomfortable. If they could go in shorts and t-shirts, they could really relax in operating the flight and everything. So I think it's more about the issue of the passenger for this case. Of course, there is some limitations coming from the uniform itself, but I think first of all, we should tackle the problem and maybe check for the mental health of the passenger who's being seated by the emergency exit.
So you don't think there's a causality with the incident itself and the uniforms, right?
Definitely not. Yeah, there's zero causality.
But I do think that this incident did shed light onto the fact that these uniforms could be very dangerous and risk the lives of flight attendants, because one of their main responsibilities is to take care of us and, you know, make sure that everyone is safe on board. And that was our news feed for this Tuesday. Moving on to today's discussion topic. We're going to be talking about a very familiar issue, but one that's not too widely discussed on the news. It's online dating. Take a look at the screen to find out more.
Would you say our generation is romantic? Rather than traditional forms of dating, a bigger chunk of us are looking for a significant other online with a swipe of a finger. Dating apps have evolved since the advent of the internet. With more people spending time online, they could find their potential partner without having to change out of their pajamas or leave the house. We've also seen apps diversify, specifically catered to each person's tastes and end goal, whether that be same-sex relationships or finding people who have the same religion or are seriously thinking of marriage. Today, NewsGen looks at 3 questions. 1. How popular is online dating for millennials and Gen Z? 2. How has actively using online dating apps affected young people in the offline, face-to-face dating world? 3. How do most people feel about online dating apps?
With a swipe of a finger, you can find your significant other. That seems to be what most millennials and Gen Z think these days. And before we talk specifically about online dating, let's look at the bigger picture. How young people in Korea date these days. There seems to be a lot of acronyms that we use to refer to the latest dating styles and trends. For instance, there's 자만추 and 임만추, which are all acronyms taking the first letters of 3 Korean words. So now, why don't you explain to us what 자만추 and 임만추 is?
So 자만추, which is short for 자연스러운 만남 추구, it's actually going for organic meetings and meeting people in a natural way, in a comfortable setting like that. Or 인만추, which is short for 인위적인 만남 추구, which is kind of funnily artificially meeting people. You're making it so that you're kind
Creating
of forcing, not forcing, but yes, kind of forcing, because it's artificially meeting people.
Right. You're trying hard to make your own fate. I think that's the better way to say it.
That's
And
right.
Xiang, why do you think more people are choosing this 인만추 option? And I hear that most of them are doing so online, right?
Yeah, I mean, so 자만추 would be a bit difficult. It would be more, through destiny.
Yeah.
You go to a park, you accidentally fall over, and there's a guy trying to pick you up, and you guys fall, stuff like that, which might be a bit more difficult than 인만추, as we say. So, I mean, even me, I thought 인만추 was internet 만남 추구, so I thought it was more based on internet. I think that's common nowadays. For example, during the COVID-19 time, an April 2022 survey of millennial dating app users in the US suggested that 31% of the users started using online dating apps more than prior to the pandemic.
Makes sense.
So it's easy, there's a faster turnaround, you can always go find someone quickly whilst you're on the move.
Right.
Even if you're getting off a job, on your commute, you could talk to the person through the application and really break the ice before you actually meet them. I think that really saves a lot of time for the millennials and Gen Zs who's working hard, who's a lot of time spent living in the city, commuting and things like that. So, as I said, 인만추 is not just online dating, but any form of sort of artificially created situation, even when your friend introduces you to someone, and that could also break the awkward first meet as well.
For sure. And I think 인만추, no doubtedly, in means artificial, but now I think a lot of people are thinking of it as the internet. So we're going to be focusing on online dating now. And what do you think are the pros and cons behind this most prevailing dating method?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we should talk about the recent Netflix show, Tinder Swindler, with Simon Leviev, I think, who scammed $10 million out of quite a few women. So I think things like that would be things to look out for. But for pros and cons selected by the Korean public on the main component of 인만추, online dating, let's have a look at the screen.
All right.
First, the benefits. Number one advantage chosen by Koreans was that they know what they are interested, know that they are interested in dating at 40%. The second benefit was clear purpose. Whether it is for long-term dating or for short hookups, you know what the purpose or the intention is. The last majority was that it's fun to meet new people at around 13%.
Okay.
Now let's move on to what the disadvantages look like. At first place of the disadvantages was the awkwardness on the first meetup, followed by hard to get a second date when the first date doesn't go very smoothly. That could be expected. Lastly, it was that it takes time to get to know someone, as you don't often share a common background.
It isn't surprising because you're meeting them for the first time after, you
so it might not work out. You might need a couple of dates.
Exactly.
You might need to be in the same situation or environment to have something to chat about.
For sure. And I think Xiong was mentioning how it's a convenient thing and it's efficient. And you know us millennials and Gen Z, we really love our time-efficient ways to do things. But when looking for a partner, you know what you're looking for. Like he was saying, the intentions of the relationship itself, but depending on the app, there's actually filters that you can fill out, I don't know, different types of educational background or how you look, what kind of race, you know, even religions. So you can really easily go through people. But I think that's also the downside of it, is that because it's so convenient, you kind of make people into something disposable, and you know, it's not as romantic as, you know, like Xiong was saying, running into someone and saying, oh, oops, I'm sorry, and then you know, there's not that kind of romance. It's a different kind of romance, but you know, it's become a form of almost entertainment because of how easy access it is.
Exactly. Love at first sight no longer seems to be the case. It's like you finding your own way.
It could be love at first sight on your phone.
On your phone with all those filters. They don't know.
But they don't know what kind of Photoshop that's been done.
That is true. That's also
you
very
don't know.
And based on our discussion so far, I guess our generation thinks it's really up to us to make our own fate and find our destined lover. But wasn't it a bit different for our parents or older generations, especially since they didn't have as easy access to a speedy internet or all those different filters that you've mentioned, right?
I mean, every generation has its creative ways to figure out how to meet people. Let's talk about my grandparents. You know, my grandfather was a conductor in a choir, and he gave my grandma a solo in a song that he wrote.
Smooth
like,
gentleman right there.
Like, here, you sound like you'd be good at this song. You know, my parents met at a conference. My father-in-law was set up by his mother-in-law, so my mother-in-law's mom on the phone from America to Korea. So people figure it out. People figure out some way to meet people. But you know, I think even being introduced to someone, it's an old concept that's just been evolving, and the younger generations finding online platforms to do it on.
Right, for sure. And Xiong, what do you think? How different is our dating culture, the one that's really fixated online, different to older generations?
Yes, I mean, I think we could also talk about the basis, the background of where the online dating comes from. So, I mean, pen paling was the common method to get to know someone without actually meeting them in person back in the days.
Right.
But I would say it was more for friendship building, although there were some attempts for romantic developments. Let's say the first instance of online dating was in 1965.
Wow.
Where it's called Operation Match by Jeff Todd and Von Morrill at Harvard University, using a questionnaire to the students to actually build up the database of how people match to each other. And in 1986, there was a matchmaker online bulletin sort of type of electronic services, as well as 1994 and 1995. We started seeing actual online platforms for online dating, things like, you know, Match.com, Yid.com, the very first series of online dating websites. So it was interesting to see that until the 80s, most of these online dating platforms began as a social experiment or a sociology study by universities such as MIT and Harvard.
And not to mention very prestigious universities as well. For sure. Now we're going to include a millennial from the States who's actually used a dating app to meet the love of her life. We'll be back with her live interview right after this. Love has no boundaries, and since we're seeing love spread through digital means, we're going to be hearing from a global millennial who's closely related to our discussion topic today. It's Linda Tapia, who met the love of her life 2 years ago online. Welcome, Linda.
Hello, Linda.
Hi.
Hello, good morning.
All right, Linda, tell us when and how you started to use online dating apps and how you met your current boyfriend.
So I started using online dating apps in spring 2021.
Right.
So I started using these online dating apps because COVID has, just happened, and I wasn't getting out as much because we're just trying to get back into society.
Right.
Restaurants were just starting to open up. Nobody was actually going out to bars or clubs at this time. So it's not like we're going to be meeting people
2021 was still
person.
really bad, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, my college was all online. I wasn't going to meet anybody.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't taking it too seriously at first. I was just trying to see who was out there.
Right.
I wasn't expecting to meet the love of my life.
Aww.
If anything, I thought maybe I could actually make a new friend through these apps. So the app I chose was called Bumble. And what interested me about this is that after you match with someone based on their profile, the woman has to make the first move to start a conversation. And
So you had to make the effort.
Yeah. So if I really like someone, I had to come up with some sort of way to start a conversation.
Do you remember what you said as your pickup line?
Yeah, what was your first line? Your opening?
Well, with my partner, he had a picture of him and his cat in there.
Oh.
And I love cats. My cat is my baby. She's my firstborn. And so I just saw how much that his cat loved to cuddle him. So my pickup line for that was like, that cat seriously loves you. And so he just went on and on about his cat. Okay, people love to talk about the pet.
Yes.
Very smooth. I mean, so Linda, as a person who has actually tried a dating app, what do you think are the pros and cons behind using online dating apps?
Okay, so one of the pros might seem kind of mean, but a pro to me is that you get to be very picky.
That's true,
yeah.
But to me, picky means just keeping your standards high. It means that you get to really choose someone that meets all your standards, whether it be like, I want to travel for the next 5 years of my life. Is that something you're interested in? Like, where do you see yourself in your career from 5 years from now? Like, do you want a big family, or do you just want to be on your own? And for me, I wanted to travel. I want to have my own career. I want to have a big family and my partner and all of that. So whatever your standards may be, just be picky about it when on these dating apps, because there's so many people out there, especially here right now. There's so many people out there. So there's bound to be someone that meets all your standards.
Yeah, you can see where they're coming from.
And once they meet your standards, they might exceed them way beyond what you thought might have been possible.
Give us one con then. What might be bad about using a dating app?
Oh, the con. It's the safety issue. There's
for sure.
As much as there is good people out there, there's bad people too.
Right.
So,
and I think leading into that, are there any things that we should look out for, because of safety issues? What should we be aware of when meeting people online?
Try to be a bit of a stalker. Once you get their name, once you get their picture, if they give you your last name, I'm like, yes, I got their last name. That means I could look them up and maybe do a background check, find their social media, and find out if they really say who they say they are.
Right.
And then share that information with a friend you trust.
Right,
so
right.
that they know who you're with on a certain date, and then also share your location with them so they know where you are at all times.
Exactly. And meet up at an open space where a lot of people are at.
Yes,
Public and open space.
Yep.
Yes, for
Always
sure.
an open space. Don't get near their car.
Yes, very good tips. All right, thank you so much, Linda. It was a pleasure to hear your story today.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
All right, and before we continue our talks, we're also going to hear what our global viewers had to say on today's topic. We asked their thoughts on dating apps, so take a look at the screen to find out what they had to say. Leon Teo said people in the younger gen have busy schedules, so online dating makes it easier to interact with your partner. Garugo Satan said, I do not use dating apps. It's probably safer to meet someone at a convention than through online dating. Tierra Bell says, I do use dating apps. Convenience is a big factor as people are busy. Also, I think the pandemic increased online dating as in-person meetings were virtually impossible. Now, I see a lot of our global viewers have a lot to say about our discussion topic for sure.
Yeah.
I do think, as Linda mentioned, one of the pros of online dating is that you can meet a better compatible partner, but the cons are for sure safety issues. That's why before we end off, I would like to ask you guys, what are some things to keep in mind when looking for a partner online?
You know, I think whether it be online or offline or in a natural setting or I guess in an artificial setting, you really have to look at their character and, you know, like Linda was saying, check them out. Be a little bit, not entirely, but just really stalk them a little bit and find out if they're really genuine and, you know, if they have some red flags, run because there will be other people for you. But if you're having fun, as Linda mentioned, and as people are concerned about, please be safe, let people know where you're at, and, you know, have backups, have people who can help you out whenever.
Backups. And think before you do anything that you'll regret later on. For sure. Any tips of your own?
Well, I can't say they're tips, but I think, first of all, I think for online dating, a lot of the online space evolves around fabricated images. So some people might not be as talkative in real life. They might not be as, you know, smooth or, you know, say what they are. But they might be able to convey those images on an online space. So, I mean, even like images, even like your selfies that you upload might be hugely photoshopped. We call it catfishing, I guess. And it's you know, it happens a lot of the times. Even when you have one of these immature artificial setup meetings, your friend might have shown you a really good picture, really, you know, sort of good lighting or you know, good filter or something.
That perfect angle.
You might see them as, oh wow, he's so handsome, you know, he's so beautiful, and meet them in real life and be really upset.
Or it could be a really bad picture of them. And so just have like take it with a grain of salt, give them the benefit of the doubt, and then go check them out, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what I'm trying to say is don't really believe everything on online spaces. As Niall, you mentioned before when we're running a quick rehearsal about some of the scam cases where they catfish you and they'll use to blackmail you to get money out of you.
Don't do anything that you don't want to leave on the internet space.
Everything is recorded.
And stuff like that. And I think that makes good sense. You've got to be really aware. I think that's why some of our viewers also prefer the conventional method of meeting someone in real life. Have you ever used a dating app?
I have never, but based on today's discussion topic, I am quite curious because I never knew there were so many filters out there.
Oh, it depends on the app. So obviously I've used some of them before. I've checked out different ones. Some of my friends actually used it and like, you know, like Linda, found the love of their lives. But depending on the app, you know, it has things like the woman has to approach the man first, or you can have the filter, or they're just, you know, the classical ones where you just swipe through and look at their faces, and that's like the biggest thing. So it really depends on the app, but I love the ones that have filters because, like Linda was saying, you can be picky.
You love them? I thought you're married.
I am married, and I actually didn't meet my husband through an app.
If anyone finds Niall on one of these dating apps, please be aware and give us a call so we can make amends.
All right, and we're going to be wrapping up right here. We've been talking about online dating app, a very growing, prevalent dating trend here in Korea. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Xiang.
My pleasure.
And Niall Song.
No problem.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.